the article you wrote, Ryan, for ONC, and this is ournationalconversation.org. It's not just a think tank, it's a media organization. We're going to find out more what it is a little later when we talk to Jeff Hall. I read it. I have some thoughts. Just to summarize the article, Kamala's coup, and my impression was from the article, my impression was the following. Kamala Harris will win the election despite being an illegitimate candidate, that Democrats don't care, and that the Republicans are incompetent at this point. Is that a fair assessment?
It's close enough. I wouldn't even say that she's an illegitimate candidate. I just think that she's a highly irregular candidate. I think in any other time in American politics, she might be a fish in a barrel. But right now, the Republicans can't even stand up and look over the barrel. So that's like a more fair way, I guess, of saying it there.
Now, you said Kamala. You
Kamala.
said
Kamala. Or what is it? Kamala. Sorry. I need to get this down.
You know what really helped me, and I thought was brilliant marketing strategy from the Dems, is the hats that have a comma.
Yes.
And a law. And I was like, what? Because I'm guilty of the same thing. Like, it's I hate to just peg it down as an untraditional name, but I think it's safe to say it's an untraditional name.
It's not an Anglo-American name. You can put it that way.
I've butchered names from people in our organization. I think I called Tanya Tina in our last interview. So it's like, it's not as if like, it's like, but, you said coup. By the way, why'd you use K?
It's German. So for alliteration, the German word for coup is just coup with a K.
So it's really good for search engine optimization in Germany.
Yes, or
maybe not so much anywhere else.
Yeah, no, I wasn't. I was planning on getting my German audience interested in American politics.
That is interesting because I didn't know. Let me ask you something. Why'd you go with the German spelling of coup? Because as we all know, coup d'etat derives from France.
Yeah.
So why German?
I just thought it was funny, honestly. Kamala with a K. I saw one of the people I read referencing, he wrote it and referenced it that way. I thought it was funny. I thought it was a nice way of using it because you see coup everywhere, palace coup everywhere. So I just, thought it might be eye catching. See if editorial would catch it, and they didn't do anything about it. So
now, when you say coup,
yes, I mean palace coup.
A lot of people on the right are using coup. I do think it's entrenched in their political tactics right now for the election. They're like saying coup, coup, coup. I have opinions on why that is. But I'm more interested in your version. Do you really think coup is the right word to describe this? Yeah,
I can tell you why. So instead of giving you my...
I completely disagree with you on this.
Good. No, this will be good. Yeah. So there's a source that was used in Politico. I think I link it in my article there of someone who got to remain anonymous, but she was close to the Pelosi team. And Politico published that, Pelosi issued Biden an ultimatum. After the debate, a very embarrassing performance. I don't think that anyone is of the illusion that Joe Biden had a great debate. Not that Trump did. It wasn't relative to Trump. It was just his cognitive decline was on display.
Melissa and I, both liberals, we were watching it going,
hard to watch.
Sure, Trump lied, but
that's
his energy was there. He was constructing sentences in a way.
Yeah.
No, I mean, it's not a secret.
Yeah. And the week before, right, Joe Biden says, President of Ukraine, Vladimir Putin, right? And he brings up Zelensky, saying he's Putin. I mean, this is next level. And that's like, what if FDR said, Prime Minister of the UK, Adolf Hitler?
You've never called,
Well, I mean, come on. That's incredible. That's incredible.
No, you've had enough diplomatic practice where you should know, but hey, if I'm up there, dude, I'd do it.
No,
I'd do it in my,
hundreds of billions of dollars, and you would mess it up.
In my brain, I'd be psyching myself going, don't call him Putin. Don't call him Putin.
Yeah, he's not doing that. He's not. Biden isn't doing exercises, man, in his brain or with his body.
Go ahead, talk about this ultimatum because I do remember that part of the, and I will quote that. I'm going to quote that right now. Actually, is a good time to quote that.
Sure.
You said in the following weeks, a shower of calls for Biden to step down came from the left-wing media. Reportedly, he was offered an ultimatum by Pelosi, the easy way or the hard way. The easy way is to save face with excuses and step down. The hard way being his removal from office via the 25th Amendment. That's a bold claim.
Well, that's not for me. This is straight from Politico, straight from the source that, they checked.
I read the source.
Okay. And so, this is what's reported. I can't confirm this. I wasn't in the White House, but to me, it seems pretty plausible. I think Schumer, I think Pelosi, I think the Obamas all saw Biden as like a strategic disaster going forward. And I call it a coup because it's a palace coup. A palace coup is a specific kind of coup. It's not a military operation. It's behind the closed doors at the big blue castle. And, they say, look, Grandpa Joe, you got to sit down. Here's some oatmeal. Here's a fishing rod. Let's get you out of here. Let's go send you to the sunrise, buddy, because this isn't working out. And, Kamala is the best alternative. She's the vice president. All their money donated. They can have. So we don't have to call it a coup, but I think, Biden is the nominee that voters selected. It's the person that everyone expected to run. He's entitled to run. If he's supposedly fit for office, he should be running. But clearly he isn't. So he was supplanted by his underlings on the basis of his impairment, a palace coup, basically.
Okay. Ryan, I do want to ask you, that quote that I read that you wrote and you cited the stories that you wrote.
Yeah.
You are not under the impression that is a little disingenuous, because to me, when I read that, and I don't mean to offend, I really want to talk about this because I do think because my opinion is that, Republicans and the right are using the word coup to try to conflate it with what I think fits the definition of a coup more. What Trump did in January of 2020. Like, you can call it a coup, you can call it not a coup. I think it's closer to the definition of a coup. Now I'm looking at what you wrote, and to me, it seems like you're implying that based on the Politico, and I think it was a Newsweek article you cited, you're implying that Pelosi the ultimatum was if Biden didn't step aside, Democrats were going to invoke the 25th Amendment. Mm-hmm. Now, I read those articles, and to me, the only Democrat, and I don't even think he's a Democrat, I think he's an independent, but the only one that's close to someone that mentioned the 25th Amendment is Jon Stewart, and he just made a joke about it, resting 25th Amendment face. Everyone else that's talking about the 25th Amendment in those articles are all Republicans. In fact, in the Politico story, I'm pretty sure the ultimatum that they alluded to were they were just going to reveal internal Democratic polling. Like, that was what was in the Politico article. So I don't see any mention of Democrats actually saying they're going to, and I don't see any implication that is the case. I only see Republicans calling for that. So in my opinion, I do think this part of the piece is a little disingenuous.
Sure.
Sorry, Ryan. That's what I.
It's okay. No, that's great. I think that's a pretty. I'm not the one who theorized this first. This has been a talking point for a long time. People talked about this actually when Trump was in office. But also, there has been Democrats, not necessarily on the news. It's been like secondhand source. Because who's going to come out and say that Biden can't run for office? This was your guy for the last 4 years. You're not going to come out and say it. But I think if he doesn't want to step down, what alternative did they have, I guess, should be the implication. I think it's fair to say I could have reworked this, but that's the option. But based on his cognitive impairment, they would need to remove him using the 25th Amendment.
But there's no Democrats that made that ultimatum. And there's no Democrats that implied they were going to make that ultimatum. So
what she says, the easy way or the hard way? Like, what do you think the implied hard way is? The hard way. No,
Politico says what the implied hard way is. They say internal Democratic polling that is very bad for Biden. They were basically going to drag him through the mud. And make it so he was working outside of the Democratic Party's wishes.
Sure.
They were never going to forcefully coerce him out via a 25th Amendment. Although, like, I do agree, like, there is a a lot of rhetoric from both sides whenever, especially recently, like Trump's unfit. We should invoke the 25th Amendment. That liberals were saying that. Now Republicans are saying Biden's unfit. We should invoke the 25th Amendment. So it's not as if it's a strictly Republican tactic.
Right.
But in this specific instance, I don't think it applies to the Democratic Party right now. I don't know.
Sure, I could see what you're saying with that. I guess where I'm going with it in the article is, let's say, they released the internal polling, right? Like Biden's still the guy, unless he steps down, he's the guy. He's entitled to run. The only way to prevent him from running is to remove him from office. And the only way to do that without doing it the way they did with, JFK moment would be, the 25th Amendment. That's the legal way of going about it. But even let's just say, okay, I'll concede, right? Like they don't want to do the 25th Amendment. They
would never. The Democrats would never do that to one of their own.
Oh no. Why would they do that? No, why would they do that?
No, well, there's no precedent for that. And I just don't, and there's no public calls for that from any Democrats as far as I've seen.
Well,
I just don't think it was an option.
It wouldn't be public. Why would you publicly say, let's say you draft a quarterback in the first round and he's not doing good in training camp. You're not going to be like, well, he sucks. We just wasted, $50 million on the signing bonus. We're going to say, well, he needs to work, in the background, we're going to work with him. You're not going to come out and say the real reasoning because it's embarrassing. It's politically it's unintelligent.
Here's what I think happened based on my knowledge of the 2020 primaries. I think, this is how I saw the 2020. And when 2020 was happening, I was like, I know what this means. That's why I was so adamant at the time not to elect Joe Biden, because Joe Biden in 2020, him and his whole team heavily implied that he's a transitionary president.
Right.
It was widely assumed, widely expected that he would be a one-term president. He's just here to beat Donald Trump. Okay. And then at the end of the term, he's going to pass it off to the Democrats. And it could be through a primary, although I'm sitting there going, no. It's going to be a sham primary because whoever is the vice president is going to win that primary.
Yeah.
Now, I don't necessarily think now I think what happened is that Biden, like it's hard when you're the president of the United States to be able to say like, oh, I've decided not to be president of the United States anymore is difficult, especially if his whole thing was like, I'm just here to beat Trump. For the Democrats. Well, Trump's running again. So he's like, well, I think I got to run again because I didn't think, in 2020, we didn't think Trump was going to run in 2024.
Right.
And so it's like, I think there was a stubbornness at play there to where I think the people around him were like, remember that you were a transitionary president and you were supposed to pass it off. And he's like, I don't think that's smart. I don't think I'm doing that, and I just think that was like, I think that was the private push and pull within the Democratic Party was like, we told the voters you're a transitionary president, be the transitionary president, that you said you were going to be. You're passing it off to a new generation. The logical choice is Kamala Harris. The timing, I think,
it's very suspicious, right? Like if he was
stubbornness. I think it was stubbornness.
Yeah, but it seems like there's no one stopping him from going on that debate with Trump, right? And I think everyone and his team knew. Let's say that it's exactly as you said. They were trying to pressure him, like, Joe, you said you were going to stop. You need to stop. Like you said, who wants to stop being president of the United States? Look at the polls.
Try to tell the president of the United States what to do. I imagine that's pretty tough.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it might be the easiest it's ever been currently, just to be fair, given the mental impairment. But and he's not a dumb guy. He's not a dumb guy. It's not an IQ thing. It's an age thing. It's not even an age thing. It's it's a condition thing. The state of his cognitive function.
I see it. I mean, I see it in Trump too. I'm not going to just. I'm not going to say that I see it in one candidate and not the other. There are a lot of people that are a little cognitively blind in that respect.
Yeah,
I think Trump is, and I think medical professionals have said this more than once that Trump is exhibiting, and you're not supposed to medically diagnose a candidate. Like there's a reason why we don't do that. I think that, what is that? The Goldwater rule. Oh, how convenient for the conservative movement. But it's like, Trump is suffering cognitive decline, maybe not in the same way, in different ways,
Yeah.
So I see it in both candidates, but it's like, I don't know. What were you saying?
I was just saying that the timing is very suspicious. I think there's a combination of stubbornness and willing to support Biden if he could win. I think once the winds changed and it didn't look like he was going to win in the polls, I don't know if it was the assassination attempt. I don't think that had as much effect on Trump's approval rating or whatever as people like to think on the right. And also, I don't subscribe to the thing on the right. Like, I don't really care what right-wing media says as much as I don't really care what left-wing media says. I think it's all strategic bias or unwilling, blindness, whatever. But I think the timing was very strange. You look at the faces of like the CNN commentators after that debate. They look like they just watched a murder happen, after Biden's performance at the debate. So I think
I was on Threads. I wasn't skimming X that night. I was on Threads, which leans liberal, and it was like a funeral on there. And then like all of a sudden, like 1 or 2 days later, everybody picked up the spin. Everybody's like, we don't just abandon a guy because of one bad debate. I think Gavin Newsom and I love Gavin Newsom, but he did brainwash Millie. He does a great job of spinning. He's a great spinster.
He's a funny guy, you gotta admit.
But so the thing about the coup is, I do think there is precedent. There's precedent for Republican, for like LBJ in 68 stepped aside, said, I'm not running, and his vice president assumed the presidency. So it's like there's historical precedent, but also I just want to, and this is where I push back on the coup thing. The delegate, there's no like, what is it called? It's not in the the primary nomination process. This is not something the Constitution.
Oh, no.
It's not something that's put into stone here.
Yeah.
The delegates nominate the candidate. That's how it's always been.
Right. Yeah.
The delegates and a lot of in the contested conventions, which this would have been a contested convention had like it gone to a primary. And in a contested convention, the people weren't going to decide.
No, the delegates.
Political operators are going to decide.
Right.
Delegates historically have always decided. You look at 2016 when the Democratic Party had super delegates. I'm pretty sure that was the determining factor.
Yeah.
In Hillary getting the nomination over Bernie Sanders. Yeah. Now, so I sit there going, this is not a coup. This is not a forceful coercion.
Well, I guess
not a coup.
The
only reason to use the coup word is to downplay the severity of January 6th.
Oh, I don't think that's true at all. When I saw January 6th on the right, personally, I was disgusted. I was upset. I had some violent thoughts watching people storm my Capitol.
I have to admit, I laughed initially because it
was embarrassing. But more than anything, I didn't care what color hat they're wearing, whatever. These people could have been Iranian operatives. They could have been Texas Republicans. I didn't really care. It's upsetting to watch your Capitol get stormed. I think if it isn't, then you need to rethink the way that you look at the American political system. But the reason I use the word coup is it's in the sense that, okay, you have, someone that everyone is expecting to be the leader, the king. The king's not the king because of Constitution. The king is the king because his dad was the king and now he's inheriting the throne, right? Biden is inheriting the throne from himself in this situation. And the king can't even walk up the steps to his throne anymore. And everyone's looking at each other like, the war is coming up. This guy's going to lead us into battle on his horse. I don't think so. We need to go put grandpa down for sleep and send him to his cottage in the village. It's a coup in the sense that they replace someone that everyone is expecting, both with historical precedent and literally like a couple weeks before he stepped down. If you would have suggested that, you would have been called, where are you getting this from? What's your source? Whatever. And then all of a sudden now it's something that is unquestioned, and I think it's a coup in the sense that the support shifted overnight immediately on the basis of the internal leadership of the Democratic Party pulling the trigger on like, okay, we got to get rid of Biden. And we don't have to call it a coup, but it's a coup.
It was always the plan. As someone that followed the 2020 primary like very closely, this was always the plan. I was always like, if Biden wins, and I said it was going to be Kamala.
Sure.
Kamala, like, it was a very bad primary for her, but I knew that all of the Hillary donors were behind her. And I knew that the media push was very pro Kamala. And then she tanked at the debate. But when Biden won the nomination, I was like, he's going to pick Kamala because that's who the donors want.
Yeah, everyone knew that.
So I knew that a vote for Biden would be a vote for Kamala in 2024. Now, in terms of just the vote, like, I understand she didn't get a vote in the primary.
Right.
In many places, the primary was just Joe Biden or no preference.
Yeah.
Now, the thing about that, though, is because she wasn't on the ballot. Joe Biden's on the ballot. You can say, oh, they were voting for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris on the ballot. Well, primary ballot's different. Primary ballot is not a general election ballot. General election ballot, though, in 2020 was Joe Biden. It was Kamala Harris. At the time, people were very critical about his age, wondering if he could serve the 4 years. And so by getting 80 million votes and having Joe Biden and Kamala both on the ticket, I think it was generally accepted that the Democratic majority, the 80 million people that voted, were okay with Kamala stepping in case Joe Biden decided he couldn't do it anymore, or he had to resign or withdraw. So I think it's a legitimate transfer, to be honest. I don't think it resembles a coup at all. Although I do want to, because we've been talking so much about this, I want to move on to because there's still so much more I want to talk to about in your article.
Sure, let's we can move.
Is that okay if we move on real quick?
That's fine. Yeah.
You said her appeal to voters is rooted in identity politics.
Sure, yeah.
Voting for a candidate's identity rather than policy. Identity politic voters assume that an overlap in identity coincides with shared political desires. Now, I agree the lack of policy proposal, to me, is a problem. Like, I want to see, I was actually, because I assumed that it would be on the website. And so when I went on the website and it wasn't there, I was confused at first. And I was just like, oh, that's not a good look. Now her policy proposals have since trickled out like one by one.
Yeah.
And as they've trickled out, it's become increasingly clear to me that strategically, this is actually a very good move by Kamala, because anytime she releases a public, and this happens with both parties, but anytime a candidate releases a public policy, right? The other side, in this case, the Republicans, intentionally misrepresent it. They completely misrepresent it. I mean, a great example of that is capital gains, or taxing unrealized gains.
Yeah.
Vivek was on, I don't know where he was on, but he was he was like saying, oh, you everyday Americans are going to have to pay taxes on money you don't have. And it's like every day, and they always say this, they go, the American taxpayer. They say the American taxpayer. Now, I always like, what American taxpayer are they talking about? And in the case of the unrealized gains, they're talking about people that have like, what, over 100 million in the market. And then they're taxing the profit after that. So it's like, I think strategically, this is a good idea.
Well, isn't it that they're taxing, what you have in stocks now, like that you're not, so you have a stock in something, you're not selling it, but you have X amount of value in that. So they tax it both before and after you sell.
Right now, they just tax it when you sell.
Right.
When you make the gain,
right.
They tax it.
They're going to tax.
That's a capital gains.
Right.
But unrealized gains, if you're not into the market for more than $100 million, you're not getting taxed.
Sure. No,
you're not getting taxed at all. And if you have $100 million, you're not getting taxed on the 100 million. You're getting taxed on the, I'm not an economist. Like, this is a much larger conversation about whether or not taxing unrealized gains just generally is a good or a bad idea. But my whole thing was, you seem to think this is a negative. I seem to think it's a positive. Considering what Republicans do to our policies, why even release them?
No, I actually, I might have it as a criticism, but it's actually, like you mentioned, a good strategy. I tend to disagree that I think this might have been the plan at the beginning, to shift to Kamala. I don't think anything went to plan, and I think things have gone the way they have, just simply because that was the road they had to take to get where we are now. But Kamala is, and I don't mean this derogatory, she is a hollow.
If you have to forward a statement with "I don't mean this,"
wait,
freaking Jesse Waters over here. No. We're going to talk about that clip a little later.
Sure. But all I mean is that she's hollow in the sense, not in a derogatory sense, in the sense that she is moldable, she's malleable, she's coachable. As you say, it's actually a good strategy because.
Wait, how is hollow derogatory?
Well, because if I say Kamala is a hollow candidate and I'm on the right, you could easily be like, oh, he's saying she's nothing. I'm not saying she's nothing. I'm saying she is absent of either good or bad. She's neutral.
Huh.
And
I didn't make that connection.
Oh, wow.
I would have struggled to see the derogatoriness of it.
Well, good. That's good. You know, I'm on the defensive.
Hollow, I'm like hollow. I think that's fine.
Yeah, and I think that's pretty clear. Like as you mentioned, that they're kind of coming up with things as they go, but they're not. You know, these are very intelligent, sophisticated political operators running her campaign, and she's a lot easier, I think, to market to the public than Biden. And I think they don't really have to market themselves anything above than just being better than Trump. And being better than Trump just consists of like answering questions, giving, some indication as to what the policy is going to be, saying the right things. We're going to boost the middle class, supporting abortion and all of these things. I think actually Kamala is going to win partially because it's a very valuable asset to them that she is hollow. They can build her the way that they need her to be. They can shape her into what they need to win this election. And I think the Republican Party, because Trump is like the semi-functioning last organ of this decomposed institution, everything relies on this guy whose mental acuity is decreasing with age. You know, you watch him answer any question, he can't do it. And it's more that he refuses to do it. And it's not a strategic thing. He just wants to talk about what he wants to talk about. He's an old man rambling. And Kamala, she doesn't have to do much, really, truly. She's got the support of the party. She's getting an incredible amount of donations.
He genuinely thinks this is cheating. And I consider Trump to be pretty petty. That's my opinion.
Yeah. Sure he is.
And don't get me wrong, I'm petty in my own life. Like when I play video games, right?
Right.
If I think someone's cheating, right?
You call him
I want to throw down the controller. I call it out and I say, this isn't even worth my time anymore. I've gotten this sense of Trump is in that mode where he's like, it's cheating. And it's like, well, what does it even matter? But like, I do want to talk to you because you are convinced that, or at least it seems so in the story, that Kamala will win the election.
Yeah.
Now, here's what I have to say. We talked about this earlier with the Gen Z thing. It appears to me in some statistics, like Trump has made gains with young men and sizable gains at that. He's made gains with black voters. And not just really tiny. We're talking like doubled his and fair enough. Like it was pretty low for the Republican Party and black voters before, but still doubling it is pretty good. When we look at these margins of victory in the last couple of elections, like they're so insanely small that my opinion is like any sort of shift in like a traditional voting bloc, which I think young people and black people, that is like traditionally like Democratic voting bloc. Like that makes me think, oh, Trump might win this thing. So it's like, I'm wondering like, where have the Democrats made these gains? Or is it that like in 2016, he brought out the disaffected vote? Are those disaffected voters just not going to come out in 2024? That's like my question. The
biggest, I've done a bit of research on this. And so in 2016, a lot of his win is contributed to the Rust Belt, you know, the Midwest, everything from like sort of Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, down to like Illinois and Iowa. These places have lost jobs, you know, they've been outsourced. These industries have died. It's right. I just think of Detroit, right? And I'm from a suburb in Detroit. Right. So you know that. Imagine, I mean, I don't think you were there kicking it in the 80s.
I mean, but I didn't live in Detroit. I went to visit sometimes and marveled at the garbage that was Detroit.
Right. So you have a firsthand account of the decay of a city that was, basically in ruins. And in 2016, he performed really well in these states, and that's where he wins. Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin. These places were extremely important. Ohio, for example. But in 2020, so the one demographic that he performed worse in 2020 than in 2016 was with white men. I don't know for sure, but I think it's between the ages of 18 to 35. He improved his vote with women and men of every other, racial demographic, but with white men, he actually underperformed his performance in 2016, and in 2020, obviously he lost, and he lost in large part because of those states in the Rust Belt that he had won before, and then that Biden beat him in there. And
those were the states we were talking about in that article. Those are the predominantly Rust Belt states where he has picked up substantial traction from young men.
Sure, yeah, and that's the thing that's really gonna, I think, the election will come down to is those, because he promised them jobs in 2016. He promised that he could revive these industries, bring hundreds of thousands of jobs. And in all fairness, the Biden administration did a much better job at doing that in that region. I don't have the stats on me now, but I read an entire, 20-minute article just basically breaking down what jobs, what acts Biden did to bring, jobs to this area, and then how Trump made a lot of promises. There's a little bit of inroads, but in terms of reviving the industry, there was no such thing. And it's not so much reviving the industry as replacing it with new industry, like electronic manufacturing and things like this. And Biden promised them this in 2020. It worked out. I think Kamala is not going to deviate from that. I think, like you said, there's connective tissue with her in the Biden administration. I think she's going to win, not just because of that. I think just because, the Republican Party is in like a civil war, as we were talking about earlier. There's the dissident right. There's the right who believes in the unitary executive. There's the right who's like the Americana Norman Rockwell boomer. And they can't even, the J.D. Vance donut video is like a perfect microcosm of the way the Republican Party interacts with the American public. They are unable to be charming, charismatic. I think, young men, but I wonder how much, the result of young men, like you say, caring about the economy. Is it just that they have the impression that Kamala won't care about the economy more than it is that Trump will? I think sometimes just like people vote against Trump, young men might be voting against Kamala.